Eleanor, the heiress to a shipping empire, had heard whispers of Isla Belleza, a pristine, untouched jewel in the Caribbean. Given her status and resources, she gathered her closest friends: Marcus, the charismatic businessman; Raphael, a journalist with a knack for uncovering stories; and the inseparable duo, Isabella and Estelle. Eleanor's financial success had granted her many luxuries, but the invitation to Isla Belleza was her most coveted. Rumored to be an untouched paradise, it was a playground for the wealthiest. Along with her childhood friends Marcus, Raphael, Estelle, and Isabella, she embarked on what promised to be a summer of unparalleled luxury. When they arrived, the island exceeded their wildest imaginations. It was as if time had forgotten this piece of land. The days were languid, filled with sun-soaked beaches, exotic foods, and the occasional exploration into the forested heart of the island. The island's untouched beauty was apparent. The beaches were picturesque, the forests dense, and the local village, while modest, was welcoming. Their first day was a heady mix of champagne toasts, sunbathing, and diving into the clear turquoise waters. By nightfall, an elegant dinner awaited them, with the table set under a canopy of twinkling stars. Days passed in leisure, sunbathing, exploring, and sampling local cuisine. One day, while dining in the village, Marcus caught wind of an exclusive gathering hosted by the island's elite. With Eleanor's connections and Marcus's charm, the group secured an invite. They were promised a night of unparalleled luxury and festivity. The venue was a grand colonial-era mansion. Overgrown with ivy and flanked by dense woods, it had an eerie, haunting beauty. Inside, they met the island's high society, including the enchanting Lysandra. Beautiful, refined, with an air of melancholy, she spoke of her family's legacy on Isla Belleza and her struggles to maintain it. As the night progressed, the lavish banquet commenced. The dishes were exquisite, each more unique than the last. But Raphael, with his investigative instinct, noticed something amiss. The staff seemed on edge, and there were whispers about the special dish yet to be served. Dinner turned to dancing. Lysandra, now more animated, invited the group to an after-party at her personal villa, promising them a taste of a rare delicacy. At the villa, surrounded by opulence, Lysandra led them to a private dining room. On the table was a covered dish. With a dramatic flourish, she unveiled it, revealing a dish made of what seemed to be human remains. Horrified, the group realized the rumors they'd heard of ancient island practices might be based in truth. Lysandra's beauty and charm had been a facade, masking a macabre tradition she was determined to uphold. A tense standoff ensued. Marcus, thinking on his feet, created a diversion by setting fire to a curtain. As chaos erupted, the group fled, navigating the treacherous forest with the sounds of Lysandra's enraged shouts echoing behind. Emerging from the dense foliage, the group's relief was short-lived as they saw the village ahead. Their initial escape had alerted Lysandra's loyal followers, who now hunted them with a relentless and primal fervor. The once tranquil beach now felt like a treacherous maze. The group split, hoping to divide their pursuers. Estelle and Isabella ran towards the cliffs, their frantic cries echoing moments later, signaling a tragic end. Marcus, in a desperate bid for distraction, set a nearby hut on fire. The flames roared, drawing the attention of some pursuers, but it wasn't long before a chilling scream announced his fate. Raphael, clutching his notes, tried to reason with a couple of villagers, showing them the written truths, hoping to stir their conscience. They paused, glancing at the papers, but their hesitation was brief. With a swift motion, Raphael was overpowered. Eleanor, hidden in the underbrush, watched in silent horror as her friends met their grim fate. As dawn broke, she was discovered by Lysandra herself. Dragged to the grand mansion, Eleanor was forced to witness the grotesque feast. Her friends, once full of life and laughter, were now the main course. Lysandra, in a perverse ritual, bathed in their blood, maintaining her youth and allure. However, instead of ending Eleanor's life, Lysandra whispered a sinister proposition: Eleanor's freedom in exchange for an annual visit with new wealthy guests. The trauma, combined with the sheer will to survive, made Eleanor accept the horrific deal. Back in the city, the disappearance of Eleanor's friends was chalked up to a tragic accident. The weight of the secret, combined with the trauma of what she witnessed, transformed her. Once a socialite, she now lived in shadows, haunted by the pact she'd made. Every year, lured by wealth and the promise of a tropical paradise, a new group would depart for Isla Belleza, never to return. And Lysandra's reign of horror persisted, sustained by the blood of the unsuspecting. Back in the sprawling metropolis, Eleanor's life had become a suffocating prison. The faces of her friends haunted her nightly dreams, their desperate screams echoing in her ears. Every year, when the time came to deliver more innocence to Lysandra, the weight of her guilt threatened to break her. One night, as a storm raged outside, an idea began to form. If she could not escape the horror of her memories, she would confront them head-on. Eleanor decided she would return to Isla Belleza, not as a pawn, but as an avenger. She began by seeking knowledge. Poring through ancient texts and consulting obscure scholars, Eleanor learned of rituals and poisons, spells and talismans. She discovered a rare poison, derived from a jungle flower which was said to paralyze its victim, leaving the mind conscious but the body immobile. The following year, Eleanor returned to Isla Belleza with a group of unsuspecting wealthy tourists. But this time she had a plan. She befriended a cook in Lysandra's mansion and, through a combination of bribery and threats, convinced him to introduce the poison into the evening's feast. As night fell and Lysandra's grand banquet commenced, Eleanor watched as the elite of the island began to consume the poisoned feast. One by one they slumped in their seats, paralyzed but fully aware. Eleanor's heart raced as she approached Lysandra, who was now trapped within her own body, her eyes filled with terror. Using the skills she had acquired, Eleanor began a ritual. The same woods that had once echoed with her friends' screams now resonated with Eleanor's chants. She intended to bind Lysandra's spirit, ensuring she'd never harm another soul. As dawn broke, the once feared predator was now the prey. Lysandra, still paralyzed, was left at the mercy of the island's elements and wildlife. Eleanor returned to the city, but her ordeal had changed her irrevocably. She sold her assets and, using her vast wealth, set up a foundation dedicated to preserving the memories of those lost to the island's horrors. Isla Belleza, once a place of death and despair, was reclaimed by nature, its dark secrets buried but never forgotten. As for Eleanor, while she could never escape the scars of her past, she found solace in her act of revenge. She lived out her days seeking solace in quiet places, away from the glitz and glamour of her former life. The tale of her bravery became a whispered legend, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable horror, one could find the strength to fight back. Growing up, Samuel was always the daredevil of our group. Be it climbing the highest tree or venturing into the forbidden woods, he was the leader, and we followed. As the heat of summer pressed down upon our small town, the reservoir at the edge became our regular haunt. Stories floated around about the reservoir, ones of drownings, mysterious disappearances, and haunting midnight cries. But to Samuel, they were nothing more than tales to scare children. One afternoon, as the setting sun dyed the sky a dusky orange, Samuel came up with a challenge. "How about a midnight swim in the reservoir?" he proposed with a devilish glint in his eyes. Most of us hesitated, but under the weight of peer pressure and not wanting to seem cowardly, we all agreed. That night, armed with a few torches and a sense of teenage invincibility, we approached the reservoir. Its usually tranquil waters seemed to whisper secrets under the moonlight. Samuel, always the first, stripped down to his shorts and dived in, beckoning the rest of us to join. One by one we did, the cold water sending shivers down our spine. Laughing, splashing, the fear seemed to ebb away. That was until Samuel, who had swum a distance away, suddenly went quiet. He stared wide-eyed at a point deep in the water, his usually tanned face pale. "Sam, what's wrong?" I called out. He didn't respond. Instead, he started swimming rapidly back to the shore. We all followed suit, sensing something was wrong. Once out, Samuel sat, hugging his knees, shivering uncontrollably, his eyes still fixated on that one spot in the water. It pulled me," he whispered, voice quivering. "What did?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hands. Cold, lifeless hands," Samuel mumbled, eyes distant, recounting the horror. "I felt them around my ankles, trying to drag me down." We all exchanged fearful glances. The legends, the stories, could they be true? Another friend, Mark, shone his torch towards the area where Samuel had pointed. For a fleeting second, we all saw it. A pale, ethereal figure floating just below the water's surface, its hands outstretched, eyes empty. Panic took over. We gathered our belongings and raced away from the reservoir, the chilling grip of fear urging us on. We didn't stop until we reached the safety of our homes. Sleep was elusive that night for all of us. Samuel especially was never the same after the incident. The spark, the daredevilry, was gone. He became quiet, withdrawn. The experience at the reservoir seemed to have doused his fiery spirit. Weeks turned to months, and the incident became a whispered legend of its own among our group. But the scars ran deep. Samuel refused to go near any water bodies and would often wake up screaming from nightmares. One morning, Samuel's mother found a note by his bed. It read, "The hands, they still call me, I have to go." That was the last anyone saw or heard of Samuel. Search parties combed the woods, the town, and of course the reservoir. But Samuel had disappeared, leaving behind just a trail of haunting memories. The reservoir was soon cordoned off, deemed unsafe. But every now and then on a silent night one could hear the distant cries of a young boy echoing across its still waters, a chilling reminder of the haunting swim Samuel once took. Sun, sand, sea, those three words epitomized the essence of summer for me. And when Jessica, my free-spirited friend since high school, proposed the idea of camping on an isolated beach she'd discovered during one of her solo travels, I couldn't resist. We had both been bogged down with work, and a quick escape sounded perfect. The beach was a pristine stretch of white sand, bounded by a dense cluster of palm trees on one side, and the endless blue horizon of the ocean on the other. It felt like our own little paradise. We set up our tent close to the tree line, just enough to catch the shade during the day, but with an unobstructed view of the waves. As the day progressed, Jessica and I indulged in the typical beach activities, building sandcastles, sunbathing, and swimming in the salty embrace of the sea. The sun cast a golden glow on everything, and life felt perfect. But, as evening approached, the atmosphere started to change. The vastness of the ocean, which looked so inviting during the day, now seemed ominous. The sky was painted in dark shades of red and purple, signaling the onset of night. We built a campfire, and its flames danced to the tune of the whispers of the wind. Sitting around it, we roasted marshmallows and reminisced about our shared adventures over the years. As night fully took over, we zipped ourselves into our tent. The rhythmic sound of the waves crashing against the shore acted as a lullaby, and soon I found myself drifting off to sleep. But that tranquility was short-lived. Late into the night, hushed whispers outside our tent roused me from slumber. At first I thought it might be the wind playing tricks on my ears, but the soft murmur of voices became more distinct. "Did you hear that?" I whispered to Jessica, who was wide awake by now, her eyes filled with fear. Nodding, she put a finger to her lips, signaling me to remain quiet. We held our breath, trying to discern the words. "They might have some cash," one voice muttered. "Let's get what we can and get out," another replied. My heart raced. These weren't ghosts or spirits, but real, tangible threats. We were miles away from the nearest town, and our phones had no reception here. Suddenly, the tent's zipper began to slide open, the metallic noise shattering the silence. Two shadowy figures loomed over us, their faces hidden in the darkness. In one of their hands, the glint of a knife was evident. "Money, phones, anything valuable, now!" one of them growled. Too terrified to resist, we handed over our wallets and phones. The two men rummaged through our bags, grabbing anything they deemed worthwhile. Their coarse laughter echoed through the night, mocking our vulnerability. After what felt like an eternity, the men finally left, disappearing into the tree line. The relief of being alive was overwhelming, but so was the sense of violation. With our mode of communication gone and the danger of staying any longer evident, we decided to leave immediately. Packing up as quickly as possible, we began the long trek to where we had parked the car. The journey back was a blur of fear and adrenaline. Every rustle in the trees, every shadow seemed like a threat. By the time we reached the safety of the car, the first light of dawn was breaking. As we drove away, the beach, once a symbol of freedom and relaxation, now looked haunted. The betrayal of that sanctity was a painful reminder of the unpredictable dangers that lurked in the most unexpected places. We reported the incident to the local police, and they promised to look into it. But the trauma of that night lingered long after. It was a stark reminder that while the world had its pockets of beauty and serenity, it also had its dark corners. Jessica and I promised ourselves to be more cautious in the future, realizing that sometimes paradises could turn into nightmares. Martha's annual summer pool party was an event that all of our friends eagerly awaited. She had a sprawling house with a gigantic pool in the backyard. Surrounded by ornamental trees and dappled with sunlight, it was our haven in the sweltering heat of July. It was a Saturday, and the sky was painted in the most brilliant hues of blue. By midday, Martha's backyard was bustling with life. There was the delicious aroma of barbecue grilling, the stereo blaring summer hits, and the sound of splashing water. As I stepped into the pool, the cool water enveloped me, immediately easing the heat of the day. Time flew by as we played, chatted, and lounged. But as the sun began to dip, casting long golden shadows, someone shouted, "How about a game of Marco Polo?" I eagerly volunteered to be it first. I've always had an acute sense of hearing and felt confident in my ability to catch someone quickly. With my eyes closed, I began the familiar chant, "Marco Polo." The voices echoed from various directions. I navigated toward the loudest response. Several times I almost caught someone. Or so I thought. Just as I was about to tag them, an icy touch would graze my arm or my back, distracting me. 10 minutes went by and I felt slightly embarrassed. Why couldn't I catch anyone? My competitive spirit rose and I decided to try a different approach. Instead of chasing the sounds directly, I moved silently, hoping to surprise someone. As I glided through the water, that chilling touch came again, firmer this time, running down my spine. I whipped around, but there was no one there. Suddenly, I heard hushed voices from the pool's edge. Should we tell her? Not yet, let's see if she notices. Confused, I opened my eyes. To my astonishment, everyone was out of the pool, wrapped in towels and watching me with a mix of concern and fear. The pool was empty, save for the ripples I created. Martha approached the edge, her face pale. "You've been playing alone for the last 10 minutes. But what about the responses and the touches?" I stammered, pulling myself out of the pool. "We thought you were joking around at first, pretending to play while we were out," said Alex, one of my closest friends. "But when you kept going, we realized something was off." The reality of the situation began to dawn on me. But who or what was in the pool with me? Martha bit her lip, hesitating. Then she whispered, "There's a story. Years ago, a young boy drowned in this pool during a party. They say he loved playing Marco Polo." Chills ran down my spine. All the color drained from my face as I looked at the shimmering pool. It wasn't just a source of fun and relief from the heat anymore. It was where a tragedy had occurred, where a young soul might still be lingering. "Look, I never believed it," Martha continued. "I thought it was just a made-up story to scare kids. I'm so sorry." The party quickly dissolved after that. No one was in the mood for fun or games. The haunting realization that the pool might be home to a restless spirit had thoroughly dampened the festive atmosphere. I never looked at Martha's pool the same way again. The boy's story was tragic, and it seemed he was still searching for friends to play with, even in the afterlife. Each time summer rolled around and the pool glistened invitingly, I remembered the icy touch and the echoing voice of a game left unfinished. The drive to Robert's family cabin was long but scenic. Dense forest stretched on either side of the narrow, winding road. Robert, my college buddy, had spoken fondly of his childhood days spent there, fishing, hiking, and telling ghost stories around a campfire. As we reached the cabin, the setting sun bathed the clearing in a golden light. The log cabin, with its moss-covered roof and rickety wooden porch, looked as though it had emerged straight from one of those old-world fairy tales. Robert began to unload the car while I took in the view. A gentle stream flowed nearby, its murmur mixing with the sounds of the forest. It was serene and picture-perfect. After settling in, Robert decided to build a campfire. The chill of the evening was setting in and the warmth would be welcome. Plus, there was something about a campfire that set the mood for stories. With the fire crackling and the night drawing a velvety curtain around us, Robert's face turned serious. "You know," he began, "there's a local legend about these woods." "Is that so?" I teased, popping another marshmallow into my mouth. "Trying to scare me?" He chuckled, but his eyes were earnest. "Seriously, hear me out. They say there was once a woodsman named Elias who lived nearby. One winter he got lost in a snowstorm. Days turned into weeks and search parties couldn't find him. They eventually gave up, assuming he had succumbed to the elements." I looked around the darkening forest, the shadows growing long and eerie. "And?" Robert leaned closer, lowering his voice. "They say Elias didn't die. He went mad from hunger and solitude. Now he haunts these woods, searching for someone to join him so he's not alone." I laughed, trying to shake off the unease. "Nice try, Robert, but I'm not that easily scared." We continued to chat, moving on to lighter topics, college memories, and shared jokes. By the time we decided to head in, the fire had reduced to smoldering embers. That night, as I snuggled in my sleeping bag, the events of the day replayed in my mind. The last thought before I drifted off was Robert's story. Was there any truth to it? Sometime during the night, I was jolted awake by a soft thud outside the cabin. Thinking it was just an animal, I tried to go back to sleep. But then I heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. Peeking out of the window, I tried to discern any figures in the darkness. To my horror, I saw a shadowy figure standing by the extinguished campfire. Wild eyes gleamed in the pale moonlight, reflecting an intense madness. Panicking, I shook Robert awake. "Someone's outside." Still groggy, Robert blinked at me. "What are you talking about?" I pointed towards the window. The figure was closer now, almost on the porch. He clutched an axe, its blade glinting ominously. Robert's face paled. "That's impossible." As we scrambled to find a place to hide, the door creaked slowly open. The cold night air rushed in, carrying with it a scent of decay and forest moss. In the doorway stood the figure, his ragged breath forming clouds in the cold. "What do you want?" Robert finally shouted, trying to sound brave. The figure's voice was raspy and sounded as though he hadn't used it in years. "Not alone. Want to not be alone." Robert looked at me, and then, with a deep breath, he approached the figure. "Elias?" The figure hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. Robert continued, "My grandfather told me about you. He was part of the search party that looked for you. He never forgave himself for not finding you." Elias's eyes widened in recognition, and for a moment the madness seemed to recede. "Your grandfather?" Robert nodded, tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry." The tension in the room was palpable. The boundary between the past and the present seemed to blur, as if time was folding in on itself. Elias's grip on the axe loosened. "I just wanted to be found." After what felt like hours, Elias slowly retreated, disappearing into the woods, leaving behind a silence that was both poignant and chilling. We didn't sleep that night. At the first light of dawn, Robert and I packed our things. As we drove away, Robert confessed something that sent chills down my spine. My grandfather once mentioned a cabin in his stories, a place he'd built for his family. I never believed it was real until now. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. We had spent the night in Elias's cabin. Robert dropped me off, and we promised to never speak of the night again. But the memory haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those wild eyes, full of pain, madness, and a desperate yearning to be found. The woods, the cabin, and Elias became a disturbing chapter in our lives that we could never revisit, but one that would never let us go. In the shadows of the night, if our tales from Unsettling Horror Stories gave you a fright, press like and let it be known. Subscribe, so you're never alone in this haunting journey, and share, so others too can be wary. Until our next sinister tale, stay dark, dear listener.